watching Crystal White Beauty. So today's look is something I've been wanting to put together for a little while. How to wear social media makeup trends
and not look batshit crazy.
Really highlighted cheek,
Sculpted brow and
dramatic mink lashes,
the highlight
contour,
really crazy oval brushes,
the cut crease to the
ombre lip,
baking.
strobing.
All of these things are really huge hot trends right now. You're gonna see them all over Pinterest and Instagram. The problem with that is knowing how that look was achieved to begin with, how to wear them, when to wear them, how these things can be interpreted into everyday life. I'm gonna go over all of that with this tutorial. Stick around because I'm gonna have a link to a giveaway that's gonna be coming up soon, so be sure to subscribe because of course that's gonna be for subscribers. So I hope to see you back again and I hope you enjoy the tutorial. Thanks. Okay, let's get started with eyebrows. Probably the biggest trend we've seen outside of highlighting and contouring on social media has been the eyebrow takeover. Thanks to the macro photography required to truly capture the details and colors and finishes of products for makeup photos, it's extremely unforgiving on the brows. So we're seeing a lot of really intensely sculpted brows that are very chiseled and defined and completely solidly filled in. If you're not careful with this for every day, this can almost look like you've taken a Sharpie to your brows. So you may want to use a powder, which is what I've done here, and then finish up detailing with a brow pencil, and then you can cut in to get those defined lines with a concealer brush. I've already finished my brows for time, so we're going to move right on to cut crease eyes. These super dramatic, very exotic eyes are my personal favorite trend happening in makeup right now, but they're very challenging to recreate, and they're also not terribly practical for most people for most occasions. I'm going to be showing a modified version. I'm starting with Painterly Paint Pot, and this is going to go all over from lash to brow as my primer. Now I'm going to be using the Modern Renaissance palette from Anastasia as my primary shades for the look. I'm starting with the lightest shade here, sweeping this just underneath the brow bone. Switching to this gorgeous burnt orange, I'm going to buff this above my crease and work this in as my transition shade using my MAC 217 brush. Now switching to the Cyprus Umber, which is a rich, deep chocolate color using the Laura Mercier crease brush. I'm really packing this on the outside corner of the eyelid and just right into the crease. And then switching here to my MAC 217 again, just to buff this out a little bit. I want this blended, but I do not want to switch to one of my bigger blending brushes like I normally would to buff this out completely because I want to keep the intensity, and you'll see why in just a moment. Switching to a smudge brush, I'm going back to the burnt orange from the palette and smudging that underneath my lashes, concentrating primarily on the outside of the eye. Now I'm going to be using a Cloud White Light. You could also use a white eyeshadow base like the NYX White Eyeshadow Primer. This is going to be where we create our cut crease. Now what I'm creating here is called a soft cut crease, meaning I'm not going to be taking this all the way across the lid. I'm just going to go a little more than halfway in. I'm using a flat synthetic concealer brush to really tightly sculpt out that cut and define where I want it to look like my crease is ending there. And then I'm lightly blending throughout the lid into that darker brown, switching to a blending sponge here. That way I can blend this very lightly into that dark brown shadow that I've left very intense on the outside corner of the lid. I forgot to film this shade. This is actually the shade that I'm putting on my lid here. This is Morphe Brushes Single Shadow in Dancing Queen, which is a really pretty, almost a warm raspberry color that I'm going to be pressing onto the inside of the lid. Now here you can do any array of shades. You could make this a neutral color. You could make this anything you want it to. I'm going to do kind of an ombre on my lid here using some pinks. This is the Pink Champagne from Anastasia. That's a really pretty shimmer. And I'm using a flat synthetic brush here again so that I can keep with the line that I've created for my cut crease and make it nice and sharp and smooth right where I want it to stop. And that's the whole idea with a cut crease. It should literally look like you have cut your crease out into the eye. I'm coming back with Dancing Queen underneath the center of my lashes. And here I'm switching to a small flat synthetic brush, and I'm going to be using this really light, almost white shimmer just on this very inside corner of the eye around my tear duct. Forgot to film this one too. This is the Laura Mercier Caviar Stick in Cocoa. I'm going to be using this waterproof cream shadow stick as my tight liner. It makes a great tight liner even though it's not technically recommended for lining in the waterline. So do that at your own discretion, but it does stay on beautifully because it is waterproof and I love it as a tight liner. Switching back to Cyprus Umber with a small definer brush, I'm just going to smudge out all of that tight line. And what social media trend look would we have if we didn't have a liquid cat liner? I'm going to be using a black matte liquid to create my cat line, and I'm going to start on the outside corner, as I always like to do, to create and sculpt that outward triangle on the eye and then fill in from there. Now for this look, I'm keeping my line a little straighter on the outside corner. I'm not going to swoop it up as much as you might see in different cat eye looks, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to come in and create the full true exotic cat eye look with this and actually create a point on the inside corner, which is an Arab inspired technique. Now I'm going to be using a lash curler to press my lashes out before applying a little mascara. I'm going to be using the Full Blown Mascara from Laura Mercier to do a couple of coats, especially on the bottom, and then complete this with a gorgeous set of lashes. I am so addicted to lashes. These are the ultimate in glamour. These are 3D mink lashes from Lily Lashes. They are to die for. If cared for correctly, these can be worn up to 25 times. They've become some of my absolute favorite lashes. And if you're interested in any of the Lily Lashes, I'll have a link below in the description box with a discount code as well. I've already applied my foundation here so that we could just move right on to the trends and get a little bit more into highlighting, contouring, baking, and strobing. My goal with these trends specifically is to show you the most wearable versions of these that are not going to be just for photography or dramatic events. I'm starting with the Laura Mercier Infusion de Rose, dropping this onto my oval brushes, and then taking a concealer palette with much darker shades of concealer in it. If you don't have a contouring palette, you can always just use darker concealers to add that contour shade. And by adding a little bit of the oil to it, I'm diffusing the pigment in this so that they're not going on thick or heavy, and so that they're not going to be as obvious when they're blended, but you still get that beautiful shading. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to be layering lighter and lighter shades of the contour color. What I'm doing is starting around the nose, working just onto the bridge here, and then I'm going to go into an even lighter shade, and I'm going to work right above the areas that I've already contoured. Now typically what you might see here is that you would go for a really light shade and start doing your highlighting colors before you start to blend. For this technique, I'm actually going to avoid doing that and save my highlight colors for some different products. I'm going to be just buffing this in using a flat oval brush, and I'm going to be working in all this contour color and really buffing and blending this out, so I'm just getting these very subtle shadows. Now a little disclaimer here. I'm not saying that there are rules to makeup. There are definitely no rules, especially nowadays. You can wear whatever makes you feel fantastic. But for anyone out there that's feeling a little overwhelmed or confused, I'm trying to give a few more options and details so that you don't feel like you're walking around with one trend overwhelming the other. I know I always like to see the makeup just work as a nice accessory to the rest of your look. Now to begin the highlighting process, I'm going to be using a concealer that has become one of my favorite concealers. I'm taking this broadly underneath the eye, top of the cheekbone, all the way down the cheek, and on this outside corner of the nose to brighten that entire center of my face. And I can brighten this more in that area than I would if I were using something that were 2 to 3 shades lighter than my skin tone. So I'm going to get a really nice airbrushed effect from this. Now, because of the finish of this concealer, I've found that it eliminates the need to do a lot of excess baking, yet you still get that finish and that effect that you would from baking. For anyone unfamiliar with baking, baking is a technique that involves using excess loose powder packed onto the areas where you've highlighted. You allow it to sit on the skin so that your body heat begins to melt it into the skin, hence the term baking, and then you knock off the excess with a powder brush when you're finished with your makeup. It leaves a very matte, very finished look and looks amazing on stage, red carpets, or under light. So I'm giving an option here of using just a highlighting powder. I'm using the Smashbox Shape Matters highlighting powder in the matte texture, and I'm using this all in the areas where I would normally bake the skin, but without having that heavy matte finish. It's going to look a lot more creamy and natural. And because I'm a normal to dry skin, this is all the powder that I need. Unless you have a truly oily skin, this many layers of powder will do the trick to set your makeup. I've switched here to my Too Faced Sweet Tea Bronzer, which is going to give just a really nice, softly luminous glow to the skin. And then I'm going back here with a brush and buffing all of this together. This is one of the oval brushes, so it gives a really nice, smooth finish and really blends everything together without removing your product. Now to strobe my skin, I'm going to be using an illuminating highlighter. That's what strobing basically is using a light reflective highlighter in areas of the face where we're going to want the light to bounce. So I'm using it down the center of the nose, tip of the nose, tops of the cheekbones. I'm going to use a little bit above my top lip. And that way the light bounces there, but I don't want so much that it looks almost like a mustache. Then I'm going in here with a little bit more of my bronzer just underneath my lip to give a little more pouty effect. Now using the Love Flush blush from Too Faced, I'm going to be using Justify My Love, which is a really pretty blue undertoned pink, right on the apples of the cheeks, and then blending all of that back into my contouring. And I'm going to be applying way too much. If you've watched any of my other videos, I always show this technique. Way too much blush, and then I'm going to go back with a clean powder brush and blend this all together so that it just looks like a natural flush for my cheeks. Dark lips have become the norm on social media. They photograph amazing, especially in these matte finishes that have become so popular in berries, reds, plums, even blacks. Ombre lips have also become the trend of choice. They're very much an art look. So you're gonna see these great gradient tones that are usually very opposite of each other so that you get these really cool, wild pops of color on the lip. Now it's very important to consider where you're wearing these and what you're wearing them with. Dark lips are not always very flattering on me, so I'm going to be doing a lip primer after I have used a scrub on my lips to make sure I have no dry patches. And then I'm going to be going over with a really dark lip pencil. Now the reason that they're not always flattering on me is because I'm not 20 anymore, and dark lips can be very aging if you're not careful. So what I'm going to show is a more wearable way of wearing these dark lips without just having a flat dark lip. I'm using this cherry color all over from NYX in the Liquid Suede, which is a velvet matte finish. And then I'm going to be blotting just a touch and going through the middle with the Melted Rainbow from Too Faced, which is a similar tone but much lighter. I'm going to be using this to highlight the center of the lip and create a very soft ombre effect. That's it, guys. This is basically a full face of almost every makeup trend out there right now in a slightly more wearable version. I hope this has helped you guys to see that there are definitely ways that we can pull this off, but also that some of these trends are just not always going to be practical for everyday use. Maybe reserve some of those for your more fun evenings out. It's an amazing, fun time for makeup, so keep having fun with it. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe. And if you're looking for more beauty inspiration and fun makeup looks, follow me on Instagram at Crystal White Beauty.